How's it going? I'm adding multiplayer to my melee only VR game. But first of all, please stop commenting about the game being London VR or Britain VR, okay? I'm pretty sure there's more London and Britain comments than regular comments, okay? Calm down. Anyhow, this video is about multiplayer, so let me share a dilemma with you real quick. When making an online multiplayer game with Unity, there's basically two paths you can choose for the solution. So first of all, we have the third-party solution. So right here in the blue is going to be me making the game, and then in red is going to be the game engine Unity. And then for the center guy right here, I basically have two options, and that's going to be Normcore or Photon. So an important thing to note about this middleman of sorts is that it's going to give you everything, alright? You're going to be developing on a minimal amount of connecting the players or even setting up the player models. For example, with Normcore, you could rapidly, immediately connect players within like 5 minutes of setup. I could be in a game with my boys so fast, but overall it's kind of hard to change, and it's especially hard to implement skins, so that's kind of a bad thing for me. And then we have a second option. It's Unity's built-in direct link for multiplayer with no third-party systems, and it integrates perfectly with Unity and will update accordingly. And don't worry about that handshake, it's perfectly normal. This built-in solution is called netcode for game objects.
Dang, that looked good.
The great thing about netcode for game objects is that it shares a lot of the best qualities from third-party systems. So just like a third-party system, it actually does a lot of the work. Overall, it takes care of about 90% of the backend for you. You have to put a little more work into netcode, but it is absolutely worth it, and this is the option I'm going to be choosing. And just by the way, under that umbrella is going to be relay and lobby services, which is also very important, but I'm probably just going to refer to it as netcode just so it's easier to understand. I was super burnt out right after I posted my first devlog, so I basically took a week break. And right after that, I hopped right into netcode. I started to get it set up and it was going great, and it seemed like nothing was going to go wrong. But then unfortunately, I had a piece of code I just did not understand. And basically the gist of it is that I had a click and drag component inside of the editor of Unity. And normally that'll be fine, but unfortunately, once you spawn something in with a click and drag component, all the values are not saved. And obviously the player can't go into the Unity editor to fix it themselves. So the SWAT rig I have takes the value of my head location and my two hands. And then it runs a calculation, takes into account where the ground is, and it uses those three locations to make it look like it knows exactly where the rest of your body is. Basically, I have to write a few lines of code to autonomously search through the Unity editor and find the three locations and slap them into the rig component. Unfortunately for me, it was easier said than done, because I may look like I know what I'm doing, but I'm barely stringing together some random tutorials, and if I get an error in the debug that I don't understand, I just copy paste it into Google and pray. But eventually I fixed it, and here's what the line of code was. And I don't even want to bore you with the setup for netcode because it's not that interesting. And here I'm not actually testing with the headset, so I'm technically not out of the water yet. And all of this is running on my PC only, so I would not be able to connect to an actual server. And there's just a lot of logistics that still haven't been worked out since I've been hitting this road bump. So now it's actually time to get started and actually see if this solution truly works. If it does, as it likely will, I'm going to be able to finish this in a decent amount of time. I'm going through all the code and making sure that only the owner of the player will be moving it. So otherwise it would be a big glitchy mess of everyone controlling each other's player models, and it just wouldn't work. So after setting up the network behaviors, it was time to run it, and surprisingly it actually worked, despite the fact that there was about 100 null reference errors, although I couldn't find the cause of these at all, and they didn't even seem to have an effect on the game itself. So if you don't know what a null reference is, imagine you have a cookie jar, but there's no cookies in the jar. And I'm sitting at the kitchen table and you're in the kitchen, right next to the cookie jar. And I ask, yo, can you give me a cookie please? And you look over to the cookie jar and see, oh, there's no cookies in there. So you look over to me, you're like, hey, sorry man, but there's no cookies in the jar, sorry. And yeah, and then I'm like, well, how am I supposed to eat the cookie then? And basically the method is trying to eat the cookie, but there's no cookie. So it's asking the other person to grab the cookie, but there's no cookie. So basically there's a whole problem. And in my case, I don't know what the cookie jar is, I don't know what the two people are, and I don't know what the cookies are. So I can't fix it. But I guess being hungry is fine in this situation, so we're good. Next, I have an unfortunate bone to pick with Universal Render Pipeline. Basically, what it does is render your textures. Any RP render pipeline, it's gonna render your textures, and the one you use just kind of depends on what you're doing. Lots of videos say that Universal Render Pipeline is the best, and it usually is. However, for some reason, there's a weird bug with the Oculus Quest 2, so if you make a build while you're using URP, it's gonna run at like 5 FPS, and it's not gonna go very well for you. So basically what I have to do right here is just uninstall it. Everything goes pink for some reason, because that's just the default texture color for Unity, I guess. Probably because it stands out so you can see that you have something wrong going. And then I just fix it. It's all good, default. It's not going to look the greatest, but it's a VR game. So Quest 2 is a potato, and that's just generally how it goes. No shadows, all that kind of stuff. And next, around December, they basically do say 'tis the season to be jolly. So I guess, I'm sorry if you're watching in January or something like that. But yeah, I've got this Christmas pack in the Unity Asset Store, which makes it very easy to bring stuff into your game that you did not do yourself. So basically what I have to do is download it. It actually goes pretty fast, but then I gotta import it, which for some reason takes forever. Maybe it's because it's a ton of textures and models. But anyhow, I'm just gonna move in the present. For some reason they're giant, so you gotta scale them down. I'm gonna put this one in the corner. And I'm going to move the candy cane in there too, just because I kind of like the way it looks. And also, I might turn this into a knife, but it might be, once I release the game, a little too late for that. But yeah, just a thought in mind. Next, I'm going to add the Santa hat to the man, which you probably saw in the thumbnail. And again, it's just so big for no reason at all. Who makes games so giant? Anyhow, I'm just going to put it above his head for this cool shot, but unfortunately, it wasn't perfect, so I got to readjust it. And I'm very sorry, I could have re-recorded it and made it look perfect, go on, but like who cares. And then there is a problem with this, and that's once I move around, the like Santa hat's just going to be floating there and won't move at all. So what you got to do is attach it to the head bone, so that when the head moves or rotates just like this, it'll go perfectly, and it won't look like a ghost is just like holding it there perfectly with no tremor. But yeah, it's all good now. And then next, what everyone's been waiting for, the lobby. And right now, obviously, I'm using my mouse just to show you that it actually works. And huge shout out to Code Monkey, because he was actually like the only reason I was able to get this figured out. He has some phenomenal tutorials, and also I yoinked his UI because I really was not about to make that myself, but he did a great job with the UI. I'm not the greatest at designing this stuff, so it looks a little weird. I changed the colors a bit, but yeah, eventually I get it figured out. And also, there's no way to actually start the game yet because I haven't actually added the relay and turning it into the netcode. Also, you can obviously change your name. I'll have to add a in-game keyboard for VR later. But yeah, it's actually a really great system. I'm really happy with it. But to make it actually interactable with VR, first of all, you have to make it the world space, which I already happen to have it that way. But after you make it the world space, you got to remove the event system component right here. It's just the default one, and you want to make it the XR. So basically, there you go, you put in the XR, and once you run it right now, like you can see, it works obviously just as any other VR game. I'm really happy with this, honestly. It's actually beautiful. You make the lobby, and all the buttons obviously work, and I'm very excited to see what I'm adding in the future. And finally, if you haven't joined the Stiletto VR Discord yet, please do. If you have any questions, I will absolutely answer them, and there's a ton of leaks in there so you can find out stuff early, and you can also suggest stuff if you have an idea for the game. And if this is your second devlog that you're watching, go ahead and subscribe. Maybe I can even get to 10K before the year ends. And also, the next video is going to be about getting the game ready for release, hopefully shortly followed by a release. And yeah, other than that, see you later, and I hope you have a good day.